Testing 1, 2, 3.
Good morning. Welcome to the Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for November 9, 2022. As we get started today, I'd like to recognize a new hire here at the Commission, Ms. Stacy Edwards. She's our new Fiscal Services Officer. Stacy, where are you? Right in the back row there. She joined us on November 2nd of this year. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Accounting from Village Julie College, which is now Stevenson University. And she has over 20 years of accounting experience, with 5 of those years at the supervisory level. She comes to us from another agency at the state, the Subsequent Injury Fund in Hunt Valley, Maryland, where she was an accountant there. She'll be reporting to our Chief Financial Officer, Rick Dielman, and I just want to welcome Stacy. So welcome to the agency. Thank you. We do have meeting minutes to approve from our last meeting last week on November 2nd, 2022. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The meeting minutes are approved. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. There's no consent agenda this week. Also, at the outset, I wanted to note that we will defer item number 3 to the administrative meeting on Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. Item 1 on the administrative meeting agenda consists of revised tariff pages from Columbia Gas of Maryland, Inc.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Coates.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Pam Coates on behalf of staff. On September 15 of this year, Columbia Gas of Maryland, Columbia, filed a request to remove subsection 4.9 from their tariff. Subsection 4.9 prohibits Columbia from providing service to an additional building on a lot where they already provide service to the primary building. The company states in their filing that because of this prohibition, they have recently denied several requests for service. All of these requests have been for residential service and have involved, for instance, a detached garage that has been converted to a living space. Staff notes that there is no engineering reason for the prohibition in subsection 4.9, and neither Baltimore Gas and Electric, BGE, nor Washington Gas has a similar prohibition. Staff also notes 2 concerns. First is the possibility that these secondary services may result in subsidization by other gas customers. Columbia's tariff permits the installation of up to 150 feet of service line for gas heating and up to 50 feet of service line for all other uses without cost to the customer. The secondary buildings in question here are likely to be smaller than the average size residence on which those lengths were based, and are therefore likely to have smaller loads. Granting them the same free footage as an average size residence is likely. The second concern relates to Maryland's goals for greenhouse gas reductions and the possibility that the legislature may, in the future, adopt a policy of electrification. The more quickly the company recoups the cost of any extension, the smaller the potential for stranded asset costs should that policy change occur. Removing subsection 4.9 would enable Columbia to serve its customers under conditions comparable to Maryland's other major gas utilities, would promote Columbia's financial health, and would enable their existing customers to obtain the benefits that accrue from a growing customer base. However, doing so raises concerns about subsidization and stranded assets. Staff recognizes 2 possible approaches to addressing those concerns. The first would be to base the free footage allowance not on the intended usage, heating versus all other uses, but rather on the expected annual load for each specific building. In this way, any free service line would be warranted by the economic test for the specific load under consideration. Proposed tariff language to implement this approach is found in staff comments. A second approach would be not to allow any free footage on secondary services, and instead for Columbia to conduct an economic test on each request for a secondary service and require the customer to pay the full contribution indicated by that test. This approach provides an even greater measure of protection than the staff recommendation. Columbia provided suggested tariff language for this approach in correspondence with staff dated November 7th, 2022. If the company chooses to bring that language forward at this hearing, staff would support that recommendation. Staff recommends that the Commission accept for filing Columbia Gas of Maryland's proposed tariff revisions as modified by staff or as modified by the company in their correspondence dated November 7, 2022, and direct the company to file red line and clean tariff pages with an effective date of November 9, 2022, reflecting these revisions. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Coates. We'll turn to Columbia Gas for its response.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Ted Gallagher on behalf of Columbia Gas. Yes, as indicated by staff, Columbia had suggested some alternative tariff revision rather than what appears in the staff report, and that would appear in section 8.1 under service connections, and it would be designated as section 8.1.3, and it would address residential service connections to secondary buildings. And the tariff provision would state that where requests are made for additional taps or service lines for gas service to a garage or or any other building on any lot where there already exists a service line to the residence or main building, neither the 150-foot rule in 8.1.1.1 nor the 50-foot rule in 8.1.1.2 above shall apply. Rather, the customer will be required to pay a cash deposit that is equal to the difference, if any, between the minimum capital investment required to serve the secondary building and the amount of capital that the company can justify investing to provide such service based on the anticipated gas requirements of the secondary building. And the rationale behind that is the 150-foot rule and the 50-foot rule were created to be an incentive to get customers to get on to our gas service. If you have a premises that already has the gas service, that incentive is not needed. So it makes sense to do the economic analysis in each instance where they're asking for a secondary service line at a particular premises.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Dr. Coates, you noted that you do not object to the company's counter proposal.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I turn to my colleagues for any questions. Commissioner Bubar.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Coates and staff, for that analysis and recommendation and the flexibility. I just actually have one question, and I think it was in the 8.3 language, and it talks about, and I'm not sure if this language is still remaining, but it says if the expected annual load is less than the load for an average residential heating customer. But my question was, in the tariff language, it says comparison to the average customer. How would someone know what that number would be as to what the average customer cost or load would be?
Okay. I don't have the answer to that question off the top of my head, and I hope it's a moot point if the alternative language that Columbia has suggested is accepted by the Commission.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Seeing no additional questions, I would move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing as modified by the company in its correspondence to staff on November 7th, 2022, and direct the company to file red line and clean tariff pages with an effective date of today, November 9th, 2022. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item number 2 is an application from Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, Inc. for a residential and multi-unit dwelling electric vehicle charging program.
Good morning, Mr. Justy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Anson Justy on behalf of staff. On September 23rd, 2022, the Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, SMECO, filed its application for residential and multi-unit dwelling electric vehicle charging program. SMECO's proposed program would cost ratepayers a total of $3,974,000 over 3 years and includes 3 parts: a residential rebate program, a mud charging infrastructure program, and a managed charging program. Staff has reviewed the 3 programs and recommends some modifications. OPC has also filed some comments. SMECO's proposed residential program would provide a one-time $300 rebate to 500 members after they install a Smart Level 2 charger. The proposed cost for this program is $705,000 over 3 years. Staff has observed as other utilities have implemented a similar rebate since the Commission's EV portfolio began in 2019 and has developed a skepticism on the additionality that this type of rebate provides. Staff believes this $300 rebate has little impact on nudging a potential EV adopter to adopt an EV when they otherwise would not have. Additionally, there are other federal and state taxpayer-funded programs that provide stronger incentives for EV adoption. Therefore, staff believes reducing this program to a residential data collection program would save ratepayer costs without impacting state EV adoption goals. Staff recommends modifying this program to remove the charger rebate component and replace it with a $50 yearly incentive provided to customers that agree to share their EV charging data. We estimate this would save ratepayers at least $105,000. And a final note of clarification that wasn't in the staff comments, staff's recommendation for data collection is based on the proposed charging event metrics in its filing, rather than SMECO's current EV database. If the Commission moves forward with this recommendation, it would require the cooperative to modify its RFP. Second, SMECO's proposed MUD infrastructure program would allow SMECO to install, own, and operate 35 Level 2 and DCFC chargers at partner MUDs at an estimated cost of $2,510,000 over 3 years. Staff supports a strong financial focus on the MUD aspect of the overall program, but believes limiting the charger style to Level 2s would provide ratepayers savings without compromising the program's purpose. SMECO has already installed Level 2 and DCFC chargers through its public charging program, and the data shows DCFCs cost about 2.73 times more than Level 2s on average. Staff has reached out to BGE and PE, who are also authorized to install, own, and operate MUD chargers. Neither has installed DCFCs through their utility-owned MUD infrastructure programs. MUD chargers are intended for residential rather than commercial use, so staff believes it is unnecessary to incur the additional infrastructure costs to provide faster charging when overnight charging should suffice. Staff estimates that limiting the MUD infrastructure program to Level 2s instead of a combination of Level 2s and DCFCs would provide at least $532,232 of ratepayer savings. Staff does support SMECO's proposal to install 35 chargers over the course of the program. And finally, SMECO's proposed managed charging program would enroll 1,000 customers to a program allowing SMECO and its vendor to manage EV charging such that a customer's EV is charged before a specified time while reducing grid strain in exchange for a $10 monthly incentive. Please note that this program is functionally similar to one approved by the Commission for the Exelon utilities, but it differs in its financing in that SMECO's program is funded entirely by ratepayers rather than a combination of ratepayers and grants. SMECO estimates the program would cost ratepayers $759,000 over 3 years. Staff supports SMECO's proposal as is, believing managed charging adoption should be a key focus of the state's EV transition going forward. In summation, staff recommends the residential program be changed from a charger rebate program to a data collection program. The MUD infrastructure program be limited to Level 2 charger installations, and the SMECO proposed managed charging program move forward as is. Staff additionally recommends the cooperative propose an updated budget reflecting these changes. Thank you. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. We'll turn to Council for People's Council.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I'm Frederick Hoover on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. We filed a letter with some recommendations related to SMECO's proposals. I'll just briefly summarize our thoughts on that. One, we agree with staff regarding the $300 residential rebate for charging stations by shifting that to a $50 rebate, although we would take one step further by requesting that this rebate be excluded from the Tesla compatible chargers. It's our view that Tesla owners don't really need any incentive to buy a Tesla, and so therefore, you know, this incentive program for them to benefit from this charging program isn't really needed. And it's my understanding, at least historically, the state's incentive for purchasing automobiles has always excluded Teslas based on the fact that the Tesla owners tend not to be motivated by any incentive program. We also agree with staff's and SMECO's managed charging program, but we do disagree with the multi-unit dwelling proposal. We have opposed this during the mid-course review when it was proposed for BG&E and the other utilities. To our mind, we're perfectly happy with utilities providing so-called make-ready aspects of charging infrastructure, but it's our view that having the utility construct it, own it, and operate it is just a bridge too far for us when it comes to providing incentives for multi-unit dwellings. I realize that this has been an ongoing problem, but still, it's our thought that some focus on the make-ready aspects of this are more important than this owner-operated utility program that's been proposed, both that is in operation for BG&E and is proposed for SMECO. And then finally, it's our request that SMECO refile the BCA analysis that they provided as part of this proposal to conform with the new Maryland EV jurisdictional specific test. I mean, there was a lot of work put in by the working group to develop this specific test, and we think it shows a lot of promise, and it's actually, the reason why this test was adopted by the commission was for situations like this, in order to allow the commission and the parties to review the proposals being made by utilities for EV programs, measure the benefits both to the utilities and the cost to ratepayers to fund these things. So it's our view that SMECO's program should be utilizing this specific test instead of the one they use for their proposed filings. And with that, I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hoover. We'll have questions for you in a moment. We'll hear from the cooperative first, and maybe the cooperative could begin with Mr. Hoover's last argument on the BCA test.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Mark McDougall, and on behalf of ASMECO, with me today is also Jeff Shaw. I was going to address his other issues first, but I will turn it over to Mr. Shaw, who'll address the BCS at this point. Thank you.
Morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Jeff Shaw on behalf of SMECO. To start with Mr. Hoover's last remark there, SMECO is in agreement that we could provide those individual cost-benefit analysis. All that I would ask is, I'm going to talk briefly here a second, that we agree with staff's recommendations to move away from the $300 to the $50, to move away from the DC fast charging in the multifamily arena, keep managed charging as proposed. We would refile our budgets. When we refile our budgets, we would go ahead and run the individual cost tests for each program, as Mr. Hoover indicated.
That seems to have resolved everything. Is there anything for Mr. McDougall to say in that case?
I want to thank Mr. Shaw for covering what I was going to say. The other point that People's Council raised that SMECO disagrees with is the exemption of Tesla owners. With the availability of the $50 per year incentive for data collection, that incentive is not put in place to incentivize customers to purchase vehicles, but it is to incentivize them to provide data. We believe that data would be helpful from all EV owners, not just non-Tesla owners. And since we're not trying to incentivize customers from buying EVs generally, we don't think Tesla owners ought to be exempt.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. Mr. Hoover, how do you exclude Tesla owners? Is it just your office's opinion that Tesla owners are well-heeled and they could afford to not receive the $50 credit when other folks driving higher-priced electric vehicles could receive the credit?
Quite frankly, yes. I mean, and I can tell you when I was in a previous position in designing the state's incentives for electric vehicles, we specifically excluded Tesla owners. And quite frankly, it was our view that Tesla owners, the people that buy Teslas, buy them for a variety of reasons, but state incentives appear to have no influence on them at all.
What about higher-priced electric vehicle makes?
Well, I mean, the Tesla is the one that is sort of at the peak when it comes to the price availability. Now, that may be most of the incentive programs that are designed are factoring in the price of the car and excluding the ones at the higher ends. You know, Tesla's just sort of the poster child, I guess, of the higher end EV.
It's becoming, though, the Ford Taurus. You see the Tesla 3s everywhere. A few years ago, the starting price of a Tesla 3 was $37,500 even. There are much more, the Cadillac Lyriq and other manufacturers are producing in smaller quantities more expensive electric vehicles. So just signaling out Tesla is concerning to me, without more evidence that Tesla owners are they don't need the money. I could say I'm very proud of the fact that the staff of the Public Service Commission, now we have like 6 or 8 folks driving electric vehicles to work. And these are state employees, and I know their salaries, and they're not making terrible amounts of money. And the majority of PSC employees who drive electric vehicles, the overwhelming majority, drive Teslas. I don't. Mike doesn't. But everybody else does. They're all Teslas. So, Mr. Hoover, I don't see that your argument holds water, at least with me, in any way, shape, or form. Do my colleagues have questions? Commissioner O'Donnell, then Richard.
Let me go to the co-op. Mr. Shaw, when would you propose to redo this BCA? In other words, we got this filing before us, but you want us to make a decision without the revised BCA and then come behind us later and show us what you come up with?
I guess in semantics, you could defer until receiving said benefits cost analysis and then ruling at a later date. Not ideal for me, but I would have to return to address that, yes.
If we're going to do that, I think it's essential. We're going to have an important piece of information that's pending that we won't have.
Understood.
Let me ask you a couple other questions. Your figure 1 in your original filing has a few alternative fuel corridors indicated. One coming out of, looks like Prince George's County down through southern Anne Arundel and into Calvert and across the bridge, Thomas Johnson Bridge, and one coming down through Charles. It looks like 301, I suppose. Whose corridors are they in that figure 1?
Those are the state road corridors that go down through the service territory.
Okay, so does SMECO have a role in those pending corridors at all?
Yes, there will be a role when that comes to fruition with the NEVI money, that we would be doing the so-called interconnection or the hooking up of those stations that come along with some of the NEVI money through that area. Yes, sir.
Do you know when their pendency is anticipated to come to fruition?
I don't. I did see an email this morning from Amanda Best notifying that the Maryland Department of Transportation has put in a filing before the EV group, working group, for some make-ready proposals that they want to discuss. So it's coming. I just don't have a date and time.
Okay. Did the cooperative consider funding this expansion with federal grant monies at all?
The residential rebate and the multifamily?
Any of it? Did you look at it? Is there any available? Did you check it out? Did you pursue that?
We did look at it. There are no monies available in our understanding of those federal dollars for the programs that we proposed.
Okay. Just so you considered it, because I know parties have concerns that citizens aren't taking full advantage of some of the federal monies that are available, and I don't know what they all are for sure. So I wanted to know if the cooperative did consider that. Where do you propose to site these mud chargers? Where will they be? Because we've had other proposals before us. They'd be within a mile or two of a multifamily development. Where does the cooperative propose to install them?
Sure. We have previous relationships that we have gained through our Empower Maryland programs and all the multifamily work that we've done through those programs. So those relationships that we've established with those multifamily owners across the service territory, we would revisit those and then propose these projects with them.
So what I'm trying to discern is, are they going to be on the site of those MUDs, or are they going to be within a certain circumference of those MUDs?
It is my
Because
opinion they would be on site of those
Okay, so
multifamily.
that's a
areas.
commitment of the cooperative. They will be on site and not located 2 miles away at some commercial development somewhere else.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I think that's all the questions I have for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. With respect to the Commissioner's first question, Mr. Shaw, you would agree with me that you would have to refile the application with the updated study numbers?
Yes, we would.
Okay, all right. So we would in fact either be deferring or waiting for the new filing to make the changes and to include the new BCA analysis. Commissioner Richard.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today with this proposal. I'm pleased to see that SMECO is participating in the EV pilot. I did have a question about the MUD program, the chargers. One thing I've noted just since we began the program, there seems to be in some places companies out there that are actively working to promote their product at MUD, multi-unit dwellings. In fact, one that I use frequently when I go to Lewis, Delaware, is near a restaurant, and it appears that this company is doing this and is actively promoting it to other multi-unit to provide these services. Are we certain at this stage of the game that we won't be stepping on a private sector initiative if we move forward with the proposal you're bringing to us today?
I would say for SMECO's service territory today, no, we would not be stepping on those toes. I'm not aware of a multifamily installation. There could be, but I'm not aware of a multifamily installation in the SMECO service territory. We have been reached out to by multifamily communities, and we've been unable to go in and do work, and we've turned them over to private industry to ultimately get the charger, but I haven't seen one yet.
Okay. And staff, are you aware of, the company I'm thinking of that I see frequently, particularly on the Eastern Shore, is SemaConnect. And they've seem to be working with a lot of these housing developments. And they are also available to just, people who may be transient. Are you aware of any possibility we might be stepping on, again, a company that's actively trying to get into this business?
We're not aware of stepping on any toes there.
Okay.
The way we see it is that this is something of a bridge program to help get EVs into the market, which would make it a better incentive for the private companies to come in. What we are seeing is that the more densely populated areas are a better option for these private companies. So the rural territory that SMECO serves might need a little longer bridge, is how we see it.
Okay, great. That's good information. And then I guess just on the managed charging program, if I could just ask OPC, you heard some of the questions and points made by the chairman. For me, managed charging is an important aspect of our pilot, and it's, I think, pretty well known that Tesla has a majority of the market share at this point. Are there any reservations that OPC has about potentially excluding the Tesla driver from actively participating in our managed charging program?
Well, I mean, I think one of the other proposals that they had was creating a managed charging program, and we thought that, if the customer adopts a time of use rate or some of the other proposals, they'll be part of that. So I guess our thought was that they just didn't need $50 to sort of help motivate them to get in there. Just on the general view that Tesla owners, albeit, they may be Horatio Alger, are sort of immune to incentives for buying those automobiles, at least from what I've seen in all the years I've been dealing with electric vehicles.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a large secondary market now too. So I mean, I take your point. I think it's something we should consider. But at this point, I think I'm very supportive of getting as many of our utilities engaged in our pilot. And I applaud SMECO for being here today. And with that, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Richard. I won't put Commissioner Linton on the spot and ask him if he's immune to price. I'll turn to Commissioner Bubar.
Thank you. I don't have an electric vehicle, so I do appreciate the comments and questions from Commissioner Richard, and thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. So several of my questions have been answered already. Mr. Justy, I really appreciate your explanation of kind of the bridge, because I find myself, kind of thinking about, with OPC's comments, what is the role of the market versus utilities, but I don't think the market's quite there yet, so your information was very helpful. So I just have one remaining question, and that is, maybe it's for SMECO, on requiring, what is your thoughts on requiring people to sign up for the TOU rates or something like that with getting the rebate? I noticed that's not part of the proposal, and I wanted to see if staff had an opinion on that.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start with that. We do not have our EV time of use only ready today, but it is forthcoming. I will say that. Don't have a timeline yet, but we are definitely working on that. As far as the $50 to be on time of use, that's something we could discuss. I'd be willing to open and discuss, but I think with the managed charging, as well as that $50 for data, I think there's a couple of different options we could have inside of there. So I would not want to make it mandatory.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments?
I think it would be helpful to have the data that's coming from this program, if it's approved, before requiring people to sign up for the TOU use program, because we could adjust that program to be more optimal, and I think it's good to allow customers to have the chance to decide if it's good for them or not.
Okay, thank you. And I also wanted to echo, thank you, SMECO, for offering to be part of this program. It's great.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question for the company. One of the reasons for moving forward with the EV pilot was to encourage the competitive market to invest more in Maryland, to also build out electric charging stations of their own. So as part of your initiative or your proposal to add a lot of public charging, are you considering locations that are locations that might be actually in competition with spaces that the competitive market might want, or are you looking at places where the competitive market might be shying away because there may be needs for make-ready types of investment, and so that's a better spot for your investment?
I couldn't sit here and say honestly that we wouldn't be competing, because there probably would be some multifamily areas that would be competing a little bit against. I would say that honestly. I don't know them exactly, because I don't know exactly what their business model is and what they're looking for as far as a community in a multifamily arena. I'd have to maybe talk to a SEMA Connect to see if they would share that kind of information with us. But I think with our service territory and what I'm envisioning, the multifamily that I'm seeing is removed from, I'd say, commercial development, and it's situated in areas that are planned unit developments or PUDs that we see within the service territory, kind of semi-removed from commercial. And I think a lot of the private industry that I've seen going up and around in our service territory has been really designated to that commercial space. If that makes sense.
No, it does.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's all the questions that I had. I was going to make a comment about incentives, but I won't do that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. McDougall, Mr. Shaw. We are not going to take any action on this item today. We'll await a new filing from SMECO consistent with the discussion. Thank you. Next item.
Mr. Chairman, item number 4 is a request from Baltimore Gas and Electric Company for an extension of the operational deadlines for its Chesapeake and Fairhaven energy storage pilot projects.
Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning, Mr. Commissioner, Chairman, and Commissioners. Pursuant to the Energy Storage Pilot Project Act, the Commission issued Order Number 89240 in case number 9619, establishing an energy storage pilot program. Accordingly, the Exelon Utilities developed energy storage pilot projects and on April 15th of 2020, filed a joint application with the Commission for approval in accordance with the standards and timelines prescribed in the Act. This includes BGE's Chesapeake and Fairhaven energy storage pilot projects. The company proposed the projects to resolve capacity constraints, to enhance distribution system reliability, and provide services to PJM, including frequency regulation and other market services. On November 6, 2020, the Commission approved BGE's pilot projects subject to the general conditions specified in the order and an operational start date of February 28th of 2022. On September 27, 2022, BGE filed its second request for an extension of both its Chesapeake and Fairhaven projects' operational deadline to January 2023 and May 2023, respectively. The company is requesting the extensions due to continued supply chain issues, needed project design changes, and for additional testing to accommodate any unforeseen issues prior to operation of the projects. The company also reported updated project costs for its Fairhaven project, reflective of a $600,000 increase due to the remanufacturing of switchgear equipment that did not meet the company's operational standards for grounded equipment. To correct the issue, the company has been working with the manufacturer, who has stated that it needed 20 weeks for the material procurement and 2 weeks for the field repairs. As a result of the increased project costs for its Fairhaven project, the project's estimated benefit cost analysis ratio has decreased from 1.03 to 0.99. BGE did not report updated project costs for its Chesapeake project, as any incremental costs associated with the project as a result of these delays will be funded by using its already approved 50% contingency funding. Although BGE's energy storage pilot projects have both incurred operational start date delays and a slight decrease in projected benefit cost ratio for its Fairhaven project, both projects will enhance distribution system reliability, provide PJM market services, and provide BGE an opportunity to gain additional battery energy storage system operational experience. Staff concludes that all these reasons are good cause to grant BGE's request to extend operational start dates for both projects. Pursuant to Public Utilities Article 7-216H62, staff recommends the Commission approve BGE's request for revised operational start date of January 2023 for its Chesapeake project and May 2023 for its Fairhaven project for good cause.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Herson.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. Dan Herson for Baltimore Gas and Electric. First of all, I want to thank, as usual, Mr. Wilson and staff for their analysis on this matter. I will be available to take any questions your honors may have, but I want to give you all a little bit of an update since we made our filing, which was in September. On the Chesapeake project, we have some good news. So the interconnection work is done for the project, and we were actually able to energize the project 2 weeks ago. So right now, we're in this phase of conducting some testing for the communications for operations and wholesale market participation with PJM. And we have some remaining site work to do, put an apron in on the access road, restore some landscaping, that sort of thing. So we are really close on this particular project. And I'm just going to say that our partnership with the developer, Amoresco, has been very positive. They really did lean into the supply chain issues on this particular one. And in fact, they even went so far as to pre-stage all of the non-battery equipment at the location, which is not something they would normally do, and procure a heavy-duty crane to drop the batteries in to the middle of the facility after the fact, so that we didn't have to do it the other way around, and that cut some time off of what we were expecting to be a rather lengthy delay. So really, on the Chesapeake project, The delay was solely attributable to the battery delivery timeline. These were batteries coming from China. It just took a long time over the summer. And, you know, our team and the Amoresco team has worked very hard to get this project ready for operation, and we're almost there. Frankly, I think we probably could have this thing up and running by the end of the calendar year. We're asking for that additional month, which is a 60-day extension request from today, to account for any last-minute hiccups that may occur. Could be weather-related. I know we have this potential low-pressure system coming up. Anytime it rains heavy down there at the site, it causes some issues with getting things completed. But I just wanted to give the commissioners an update on that one because we're very close on it. So we're just asking for this 60-day extension on that one. Fairhaven, it's a little bit more complex. The civil engineering at that site is complete. Right now, we're waiting on battery containers, backup generators, and a switchgear building, which we've been told is going to be delivered in mid-December. Those particular items are completely delayed because of supply chain issues. The developer we're working with has tried very hard to mitigate some of that. We've had some success, but we're still having some delays there. The other component here that is leading to the extension request is this redesign that we had to do. That became apparent to us as necessary because we were doing some factory acceptance testing back in the summer. We realized that as designed, it was not going to meet our safety standards. I'm not putting blame on the developer or our company for that. It was just simply a situation that arose because this is a new type of technology we're using in a substation with a new developer to our system. We just felt that we had to redo some components to make sure this was super safe. This is a very tight facility. We're talking about equipment in the middle of a substation. We needed to make sure it was going to be safe and reliable. It's an unfortunate development. It led to some additional costs, and unfortunately, when you had to do a redesign, that meant you had to go back to the factory, and then the factory said, well, what normally would be a 3-week supply delay is now 20 weeks. So it was a combination of a redesign and supply chain issues. But there is activity going on at the site. If you go by the site, we've got the foundation in, there's iron in the ground. PJM is doing I'm told, the analysis to determine the nodal price so that this facility can participate in the wholesale markets. We're looking at having most of the equipment in by January or early February to do some testing in March and final site work in April. So that's why we asked for the May extension on this particular one. I will just close, excuse me, by saying I understand that these extension requests are very frustrating. They're frustrating for us. I mean, I think I stood up here during the last extension request and said, I only want to come in here one time. I don't want to come in here again. Well, here I am again. I'm not happy about that, but it's just a reality of what's happened at these two particular sites. But I would like to offer some perspective. As of today, we have 2 of the 6 Exelon projects are operational. The Elk Neck for Delmarva, the bus depot for Pepco. If the commission grants this request, in 60 days, we're going to have 3 of them up and running. By next April, I believe Pepco is supposed to have their second project up and running, and if the commission grants our request, we'll have this one, Fairhaven, up and running by May. So that would be 5 out of the 6 Exelon projects up and running roughly a year and change after the statutory deadline. I realize that's not ideal, but frankly, that statute was passed before we even really knew what COVID was. So I think that arguably is pretty good considering everything that's happened in the last few years. But I understand these extension requests are frustrating, but we're respectfully asking for a 60-day delay on Chesapeake and the 6-month delay on Fairhaven. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions your honors may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Urson. Obviously, nobody could have envisioned COVID. And the fact is, these are slow boats from China with the batteries on them. But the $600,000 increase in Fairhaven, that's solely on BGE. Does the contractor bear any responsibility for the increase in costs?
I believe that is solely on us, Your Honor. I'd have to look at the contract to see if there's anything there that would mitigate some of that. About 490,000 of the 600 is related to the redesign and the supply chain delays. The other 110 is related to some final site restoration work. I will say, I know it wasn't brought up at all. There may be some investment reduction or IRA tax credit opportunities for this project. I have an ask out to our tax team to figure that one out. I was looking through the law the other night. It looks like this energy storage project may be eligible for something there, anywhere between a 6% to 30% tax credit depending on the components. So I'm still exploring some of that, which might mitigate some of that extra cost. But to answer your Honor's question, yeah, that's probably going to be on us.
Well, we thank you for that. We do expect, and we've emphasized and stressed that it is incumbent on the utilities to seek out and apply for any IIJA and IRA funding, and we look forward to those monthly reports. So I would expect the utilities, the Exelon utilities, to investigate if any of these costs can be defrayed, because now we have a benefit cost ratio that's in the red. What, 0.99% is?
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that was a factor that the commission considered, the cost benefit ratios, when we initially approved these 8 projects. They're dwindling now. Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The energizing of the Chesapeake project that you alluded to, is that the backfeed date that's referred to in the various filings on this matter? Is that the milestone of the backfeed date?
I would have to check, Your Honors, but subject to check, there may have been a slight delay in that, but I think we were pretty pleased that we were able to get that energized where we were, because originally we thought that was going to take longer.
Understood. The buck sheet caught my eye when it said that the company said that they weren't able to complete testing because they weren't able to meet the backfeed date with the interconnection.
Right, okay.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood what we're talking about here. Notwithstanding the fact that you give a pretty persuasive presentation, Mr. Herson, the fact is the Fairhaven project's definitely going to be over time and over cost. And I don't, what's the original cost of the Chesapeake project? Has that gone up? Has that escalated?
I can check on that. Let's see. That original cost, yes, that was $2.5 million. When we came to you last fall for the extension request, we had raised that to 3.8. We are not raising that again. We were able to cover everything this recent time period within the revised budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The state of Maryland was able to get online the Governor Harry Nice, Thomas V. Mack Middleton, US 301 bridge
Yes, sir.
under time and under project, and for a state agency to make that happen is pretty amazing. And I would and it happened during COVID. I would expect that private industry would be able to do something similar on behalf of the projects that it brought before this commission, but it hasn't been able to do that. Therefore, I'm going to lay down a marker with my vote on this. I just want to express that it's not because I don't want to see these projects get done. I want to be very clear about that. It's because I do want to see these projects get done. And I don't want them to be over time, and I don't want them to be over budget. So that's, anybody that intimates that this is so important for the state policy, I agree with that strongly. But we're not getting it done, and that's my frustration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Bubar.
I actually had all of my questions answered by Mr. Herson's information, so thank you. I don't have any further questions.
I will call a motion. I move that we approve the company's request for a revised operational start date of January 2023 for its Chesapeake project and May 2023 for its Fairhaven project for good cause pursuant to Public Utilities Article Section 7-216 H is in Hotel 6, Romanet 2. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar,
Aye.
Commissioner Linton,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
No.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion passes on a 4-1 vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item number 5 is a request from Jade Meadow LLC for approval of its decommissioning plan in case number 9643.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Christopher Lowe on behalf of staff. On September 30th, 2022, J Meadow LLC requested Commission approval of the decommissioning plan for the J Meadow Solar Project pursuant to the PPRP Condition Number 35, which was adopted by the Commission as part of the CPCN issued by the Commission that authorized the construction of the project. According to PPRP Condition Number 35, J Meadow is required to file for Commission approval a decommissioning plan along with a decommissioning cost forecast from a third-party consultant to determine the amount of surety bond, letter of credit, or other financial security that J Meadow must obtain in connection with the decommissioning. In its filing, J Meadow describes its plan for decommissioning activities for equipment associated with the project after its useful life. The plan also addresses removal of all structures, foundation, restoration of the site, and vegetation. J Meadow forecasts that it will incur a total decommissioning cost of $1,647,063, and that it will receive $1,644,482 in decommissioning revenues associated with the salvage value of the project's facilities and equipment. The company commits to use a surety bond to provide financial assurance in the amount of $450,221 to cover the estimated net liability associated with the decommissioning. Staff recommends that the Commission approve J Meadow's proposed decommissioning plan and direct the company to provide documentary evidence that it has secured a surety bond of $450,221 prior to commencement of the construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Office of the Attorney General.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Steve Tolson, Assistant Attorney General, Counsel for PPRP. On November 3rd of 2022, PPRP filed a letter into the record expressing some concerns with the decommissioning plan that was originally filed and also noting some of the concerns that staff had expressed. Since that time, a revised decommissioning plan has been filed and has been reviewed by PPRP, and that plan meets the concerns that PPRP addressed in the letter, and it also, I believe, meets staff's requirements. And therefore, at this time, it is PPRP's position that Condition 35 has been met by that plan, and it has no opposition to approval of the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Tolson. Counsel for Jade Meadow, anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. David Beaglemans on behalf of Jade Meadow, LLC. As Mr. Tolson indicated, we did file a revised plan on November 7th that addressed some of the inconsistencies identified by staff. So I think we're all on the same page here. I'm just here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I would move that we approve the company's proposed decommissioning plan and direct the company to provide documentary evidence that it has secured a surety bond of $450,221 prior to commencement of construction. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item number 6 is a request from Z-Trip to increase rates for taxi cab services in Baltimore City and Baltimore County.
Good morning, Assistant Director Gorman.
Good morning, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, good morning, Commissioners. Mark Gorman on behalf of staff. On October 17th, 2022, Z-Trip, a taxi cab association trading under WHC MD LLC, filed a request to increase rates for taxi cab services offered in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Z-Trip requests authority to increase rates that produce an average fare increase of approximately 16% for taxicab services provided in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. In their filing, Z-Trip notes it has broad support from permit holders from multiple taxicab associations that provide taxicab services in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Z-Trip proposes to increase the drop rate from $1.80 to $2.25 and increase the mileage charge of 20-cent increments of 1/11th per mile to 25 cents in increments of 1/10th per mile. Additionally, Z-Trip has requested waiver of the application fee, citing that they are not a public service company and the fees do not apply to their filing. In Section 4-302 of the Public Utilities article, rates for a common carrier are determined in accordance with the establishment of an appropriate operating ratio. The relationship of common carrier expenses to common carrier operating revenues. In considering proper revenue under this section, the Commission shall determine a fair and equitable ratio. The task of evaluating and developing taxicab rates is challenging due to difficulties in securing appropriate information. The cost of providing such taxicab service is developed based on an examination of the cost inputs from the relevant stakeholders across the jurisdictions to ensure rates are representative of the costs providing such services. Staff historically relies on a 50% standard of stakeholder participation as a bare minimum in establishing a threshold for evaluating cost inputs. Staff notes the filing is supported by several entities across Baltimore City and Baltimore County. However, Z-Trip has proffered no information to evaluate whether their proposed fares are reasonable or whether the costs used to develop the proposed rates are representative of the costs of providing taxicab services across the jurisdiction. In case number 9028, Yellow, the forerunner of Z-Trip, made a similar plea about filing fees but paid the required fees. After investigation and review of the facts, staff recommends that the request be docketed for hearing. Staff further recommends that the applicant be directed to file relevant testimony and documentary evidence that supports the proposed increase in rates for providing taxicab services in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Staff also recommends the applicant be directed to pay the appropriate filing fee associated with its petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gorman. Director, I said Assistant Director. We'll turn to the representative for Z-Trip, which is a unit of WHC MD LLC.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Commissioners, my name is Dwight Kynes. I'm with Z-Trip. Only comment this morning is we haven't been before you for a rate increase in 13 years. We think that 16% is reasonable. We agree with staff's recommendation. We'll pay the filing fee, put together testimony, and participate in the hearing, and hear for any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kynes. Obviously, as you stated, it's fact. Last rate increase was in 2009. What is the state of the Taxicab Association in the city of Baltimore, where the associations aren't apparently speaking to each other to get to this percentage threshold? Have you spoken to your other taxicab associations, and why haven't they been in the commission petitioning for a rate increase? Why is it always Z-Trip?
We have been the largest taxi cab company in the city, continue to be. Just as recently, just as recently as 2 months ago, one of the other associations filed for a fuel surcharge when the price of gasoline was up. So there has been activity from some of the other associations. I think we're at 13 associations right now, but I think you'd find that only 5 are active, maybe 6, and we have support from, I think, all but 1.
Oh, when this commission approved the Z-Trip application back 2019, was that when you were before us in 2019?
For a rate increase?
No, not for a rate increase. When you were here.
Oh, to become Z-Trip.
Right, to become Z-Trip.
Yeah, 2019, right.
Okay. All right. I had high hopes. It's a large operation. Are you still dispatching the taxis from Utah?
Yes.
Okay. I support the request for a hearing. We're going to need documentary evidence. We're going to need more than a request that rates haven't increased since 2009. So there'll have to be evidence in the record. And to the extent that you could light a fire under the many other taxicab associations in the city to to actively participate, please do so. I recognize that this is a tough business to operate in a post-Uber Lyft world. At the same time, you're operating under very old-fashioned regulations under this commission. You need the sticker on the side of your taxi cabs. You need a dress code for your drivers, collared shirts. It's in Comar. The fact is, I walk down to the Renaissance and I see taxi cabs and guys are in their T-shirts. That's a violation. Mr. Gorman's inspectors will write you up. Meanwhile, an Uber driver could drive in his underwear, probably. I don't know. But I recognize the pains of the taxi cab industry, but at the same time, you and your colleagues need to sort of help present the case in order to get what you want.
If I may comment, Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that COVID hit us much worse than Uber and Lyft ever did. If you looked at the industry 3 years ago, it was pretty similar in size, number of drivers, number of active associations, and vehicles on the street that it was when Uber was there. But the big decline has been since the spring of 20.
Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move that we set the applicant's petition for revised rates for hearing, direct the applicant to file testimony and documentary evidence that supports the requested increase, and direct the applicant to pay the appropriate filing fee associated with its petition. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. Before we conclude today's administrative meeting, rulemaking number 78 with respect to low-income supply offers will begin in 10 minutes at 11:12. This meeting is adjourned.